congestion, or words can make you sick. Over 2 million using the Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and feel healthier without drugs. Go to Navage.com or find Navage at Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KBFD, banging Monday through Friday from 2 to 5.
That's right, we're banging today again with Pastor Austin Hill, the First Presbyterian Church here in town. How are you, Pastor?
I'm doing well today.
All right. Pastor came in with a suit and tie on, so I assumed it was a wedding or a funeral. Unfortunately, I was right. It was a funeral.
Yeah, you don't see me in a suit very often otherwise.
Well, that's times change. You never used to see a minister of any denomination, Christian denomination, without a coat and tie.
Yeah.
But again, times change. So, you slide in your sandals and shorts and all that sort of stuff.
I don't even own a clerical collar.
You don't even own it? Really?
Correct, yeah.
The church doesn't require you to do that.
We have a robe on Sunday mornings, but usually it'll be a shirt and tie under the robe as opposed to the clerical collar.
Are they phasing out the clerical collar in the First Presbyterian Church?
Well, to my knowledge, it's never been anything required anywhere. And every church has just been kind of on their own, kind of allowing pastors to make their own choice.
Okay, well, there's just bad news all around. Here's a message from a friend of mine. His brother has cancer.
Oh, wow. Wow, yeah. So here we are talking about funeral and now cancer. That's
a good friend of mine out in Denver. I mean, I should take that back. We were really good friends when we were teenagers.
Sure.
We haven't really seen much of each other in adulthood, but we've stayed in touch, or I've tried to stay in touch.
Yeah.
About a year ago, he started treatment of cancer, but I got a message from him, a Marco Polo video. He looked like somebody dying of cancer, and he said he was out of options, and he may have 6 weeks,
Wow.
And I've been thinking of him ever since because he was just such a joyful boy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not whining or feeling any self-pity now. I know he came late to Christianity. His mother was a faithful Christian, but his father, like mine, wasn't. Let me put it that way.
There have been many kids who have grown up in the church because of the faith of their mothers.
Yeah, I'd have to say that's true. My father didn't care about religion. He was American. That's really the way he felt.
Yeah.
I'm American. Don't give me, well, of course, my mother was Catholic. He grew up with a Catholic mother. He was a Catholic father. My grandmother was actually, she used to call herself Pennsylvania Dutch, which is, of course, is an Amish person.
Yeah.
So, a couple of pretty severe disciplines there. So
Yeah.
He kind of chucked the whole thing, and I'm not doing this.
Yeah. It's amazing how much things have changed culturally, really in just a few generations like that. And it is also amazing, too, how kind of across the board, actually, there tend to be more women involved in churches than men.
Well, there's a shift going on gender-wise, if I can put it that way.
Sure.
For many, many years, the majority of law school graduates in this country have been women.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the last maybe 5 to 10, the majority of young students graduating from medical school are women. I mean, really, not transgender type.
Well, even in college, it's that way.
Colleges are that way as well.
Seminary is the same. Basically every school I've been to, I think the ratio has been something like 70% female.
Well, a lot of it has to do, people have suspected anyway, or that with the rise of sometimes militant feminism, the young boys are kind of beaten down. They just soon stay, I think we're going to hang out with girls. We've got our computer or whatever.
Or even just think about what happens in the church. I mean, we get together, we sing songs, we talk about our feelings, we talk about serving other people and being selfless. Those aren't always the most kind of stereotypical manly sorts of things.
Well, that could be changing too.
Yeah.
Younger than. I tell you, my generation, we're the checkout generation. You better be tough. You better be able to handle life. I remember my dad telling me this. You better be able to handle life because it gets tough sometimes. I'm not going to be there.
Yeah.
And he was right. He was right. It didn't make it any easier. But there's just times when you're on your own. And sometimes as a man, I found this out in my life. As a man, you're looking to figure it out. you've got women and kids that depend on you, and that's just the way it is. You can pray all you want, but
at the end, you still need to get a job.
That's right. If the bills aren't being paid, you can't turn to God, because God's not going to show up a couple of $1,000 at the front door. Or if the kids are hungry, milk and formula is not going to show up mysteriously and magically. You have to do it.
Sure.
There's nobody else. And I think maybe young men have lost that. I don't know who's going to take the ultimate responsibility now in this age of victimhood, but this is my divine talk show. Maybe we better talk with the minister about the Bible. So, in the Catholic Church, and I've heard this said when I first joined the Presbyterian Church years ago, that the Catholics are all poor. And part of the reason is the Catholic Church extolled what I remember sitting in the Catholic Church at gunpoint, of course, with my mother. And I heard the priests always wanted to pray for the rich, and I thought to myself, why in the hell are we praying for the rich, for God's sake? They're rich after all.
They need our prayers anymore.
They need our prayers. I'm going to bring this up to Joe Coleman later this afternoon. He's going to show me how wrong I am, of course, but actually he knows that, right?
So what was the prayer for the rich? That they would,
because they were obsessed with filthy Luther. They were, as I've heard somewhere. Is that a Bible phrase? Probably not. Filthy Luther. Luther is money, by the way, on uneducated people.
it might be some kind of historic church way of referring to maybe ill-gotten funds, but it's not biblical. It might be biblical in the sense that it might be in the King James translation, kind of that older English, that traditional English sound. But
well, the Catholic will say that we're following the example of Jesus. The Catholics have their own interpretation of the Bible. And that's one thing that appealed to me about Protestantism, especially Presbyterians, and frankly others, Baptists do this. They follow the Bible as a whole, not necessarily Jesus. And I don't mean to say
they don't.
They don't. Of course they do.
Sure.
But I remember going to Bible at breakfast way back, 25 years ago, maybe more than that, where some of the Presbyterian men who were affluent used to make remarks about Catholics being poor. And apparently that was something, they said it with a little bit of a sneer in their voice, as if, they're following their church over a cliff. Why don't they get a job, pay something, or start a business or anything? And I've heard the First Presbyterian Church described as a church where ambitious professional people can feel more comfortable. Sometimes they don't feel that way in other faiths, specifically Catholicism.
Yeah.
At least the old school church.
Well, Jesus did say it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Well, I think the rich man has a better chance to get camel through the eye.
So I think that brings up a good question. Is it so difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven because of his wealth? Like physically having more wealth makes it difficult to enter the kingdom of heaven? Or is it that one's heart and their affections and their desires, if they're wealthy, tend to be chasing after things other than the kingdom of heaven?
I think that was the point of it all, is that we should keep our eyes on, Catholics promise a lot in the afterlife. I really haven't heard much in the Presbyterian Church about the afterlife, but the Catholics, they're really big on it. Methodists are going to hell, as I recall.
Well,
they're not Catholic,
Well, if you think about it, celibacy, that's a pretty big trade-off in this life.
So, man, I could never get, you and I knew Father Patrick Bain there. Wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And I remember going to a St. Edmund's ball one night with girls crowded around him. Not surprisingly, I think they had an idea to challenge his celibacy vow.
Exactly. It's a challenge accepted, right?
Because he was a tall, good-looking guy. Very well-educated,
well-spoken,
and almost a little bit of a charisma for you.
Yeah.
And there were plenty of young women in his age group that will no doubt had in their mind after a couple of drinks. I wonder how sober this guy. I say that now that he's out of town. I would never, I never want to kid him like that.
Yeah.
He was still around. I think he's in Storm Lake. No, that's where he's from.
Maybe Sioux City. But
But the idea is, that there are some, as far as Catholicism goes, and I'm not asking you to answer
Sure.
for that. There's some pretty strict rules, which I think are still ridiculous.
Well, and I think maybe that it could be some of the benefit of talking more about the afterlife. But I do think, as Presbyterians, we do often get a name of kind of being like the country club sort of church, or even the frozen chosen, because there's all this ambition elsewhere, and then our worship services are a little more staid. And I think there is some level of truth to that. And I guess I would challenge or push back against that strand of Presbyterianism. I wouldn't disagree with that criticism. I think Presbyterians probably ought to look more at the words of Jesus. And not that wealth in and of itself is wrong. I do think the Bible shows examples of people with wealth who God uses effectively for God's purposes. But there really is something to be said about the challenge of wealth. And maybe for lack of a better way of saying it, I think if we have more material resources, we don't feel the pressure to depend on God as much. Because I can depend on myself. I'm self-made.
But you can depend on the promise of everlasting life a little bit too
Well,
much too.
Well, yeah, I mean, to some degree.
I mean, I know I'm dirt poor, but there's nothing I can do about it. So I just might as well wait out to the grim and miserable end when I'll be uplifted.
Yeah.
Saved.
Well, I mean, dare I say, even
Frankly, I have no time for that sort of attitude.
well, even to make it a little bit more relevant, I don't need to get a COVID vaccine. I'll just trust in God. And
Well, there are snake handlers in the world too.
Yeah.
In Appalachia, there are Protestant churches primarily who believe that the Lord will protect them as they handle poisonous snakes. Of course, there have been a couple of ministers of their churches that died of snake bite.
yeah,
There was a very grim scenario laid out some years ago in very rural Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's a beautiful state,
Mhm.
but there are some places back up in the hills there, and I've been there where people don't live much differently than they did in the 19th century.
Mhm.
Apparently, at one of these church meetings, snake handler church meetings, a minister was bitten by a snake during the service, and he fell to the floor sick.
yeah,
And people were being very concerned, and he told them not to be, because God would actually, he would point upward and say, he'd shake his hand, no, don't give me any help, and he would point upward. And that happened for over an hour. That people have gotten more and more concerned about his health, and to the very end, he just shook his head, no, don't give me any help, and pointed until he died.
it's pretty incredible.
That is incredible. Now, I don't know what kind of message his parishioners got out of that, but I would say the minister, poor guy, had the wrong idea
Yeah.
on the Christian faith.
Well, and I guess the argument would be maybe, well, now he's healed because he's in heaven.
No.
But that's certainly not the
Not
point.
what God wants.
Well, and that's not the point he was trying to make while he was there, actually bitten by the snake. He was saying that he would be healed this side of heaven. And so I think there really is this sense of you can be too heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. And but then on the other side, you can be so earthly minded that you miss the kingdom of heaven right in front of you.
Well, some people just, and this used to happen a lot, and I talked with people of my father's generation about this, that they attended church just because that was the thing to do. They didn't really believe it,
Mm-hmm.
but you had to be a member of a church back then if you were a business person,
Yeah.
or you would suffer financially. Your store wouldn't do well because Christian people would get the idea that you were not Christian
Mm-hmm.
and refused to patronize your store.
If you wanted to be an upstanding member of society, you had
That's
to
what
have
you
a
had to
membership.
do. That's right. Back in those days, it was a church, VFW, a couple other things.
Exactly.
Country club membership, and those sorts of things.
And all those days are gone.
Yeah, they are.
So there's no.
there's still a little residue of them out there, and there's still people that probably go to church just to be seen there.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I would never do something like that.
Well, the bang for your buck isn't there anymore.
No, it really is.
There's not going to be a whole lot of people seeing you there, giving you that kind of social credit that used to happen just a generation ago or so.
That's right.
But I think going back to your question about money and wealth, we do see instances in Scripture where people of wealth, people of means, are used by God, and they're not necessarily castigated for having that wealth. Even though Jesus does have those comments, like the one he says to that rich young ruler, that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man enter the kingdom of heaven. So we do have to kind of hold those in tension. For example, I believe it was Lydia, and I think, I'm not positive on this, but I think it was the church in Philippi. So one of these early churches.
Lydia, that's a Bible name.
Yeah. And so she was a leader in one of these house churches.
Okay.
But so think of this, a woman in the first century as a homeowner, so she's got to be of pretty significant means herself as a woman owning a home, not necessarily connected with a man, or if there is a man, we don't really hear about him in the story. And she used her home, she opened it up for the early Christians to gather in that church. And so she was kind of a community leader using her resources to host other Christians. So I think that's an instance where here was someone of significant means using their means for the church, and not being told, essentially, well, you're wealthy and you need to get rid of your money if you're really going to follow Jesus. So we do have some examples like that where people were not told to just go be poor, even though Jesus has those words challenging rich people. So I think more than anything, it really does.
Jesus lived as a poor man.
Yeah, I mean, he was itinerant. He didn't really have a home. Some might call him a refugee, or some might call him homeless, but he kind of wandered around in his ministry.
That's what he did. That's what he depended on the kindness of others.
Yeah.
Today you get beaten up and robbed.
Yeah. And then he even sent out his disciples to do the very same thing, to go depend on the kindness of others. Now, I think culturally, things are a little different than hospitality was more of a cultural expectation than it is today. Especially, you might go visit another community and you might have a great aunt so-and-so who lives there, and it was kind of their obligation to welcome you in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Jesus lived a very different lifestyle than kind of the stability and comfort that many of us who are his followers have here today.
Yes, absolutely. What can we say? Is there an explicit message in the Bible as far as ambition is concerned? Or should we not have ambition to improve our lives? What is your belief?
I think we can have ambition, but I do think it needs to be rooted in our relationship with Christ. Meaning, ambition just for ambition's sake, I don't think is the ultimate good. I think there needs to be an eternal kind of perspective out of it.
Well, you have some people in your church, and I can say this going well. My wife died in the late 1990s.
Yeah.
I remember the church then, and one of your predecessors, Pastor Feldman, rallied the troops. We had more food than we could eat for weeks on end, and of course we really needed it at that time. I was in no condition. Well, I had a young son, and my wife was sick at home, and these sorts of things. And when she was in hospital, one morning, David Feldman drove down there and stayed with me for hours. And I'll never forget that. He was a man living his faith.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to say that you are a member of a faith, and this is what faith prescribes. It's another thing to do it. I've seen Feldman and others in the Presbyterian Church actually do it.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, even back then and today, I'm not going to put a new roof on the church with my donations. I might be able to buy a couple extra Bibles over a year's time, but that's about it. So I am most impressed when Christians actually act.
Yeah. Well, and we can get more into that in the second half, but I think, when we give of ourselves, especially if it's sacrificial giving, I think that's what the world notices.
It is what the world, and that is the attraction to Christianity. There is one. It's not fire and brimstone. It's not any of these things.
To some degree, it's not even eternal life. It's seeing the church in action.
That's a very important point. It's not eternal life, because if you're going to attract somebody to the faith, it's going to take a while to wrap their head around that concept.
Yeah.
And some never believe it. You know?
Or even if we do, we'll never understand it.
That's right, we won't. This portion of the program brought to you by Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters. Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters at 612 South 32nd Street here in Fort Dodge. You may contact Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters by calling 576-6481 or online at www.fdwater.com. AM 1400 KBFD, the news is next.
Mark Patrick Seminars will be in Fort Dodge Thursday, October 21st for one day only.
We all have an image of ourselves, and that
Surfing the web, HTML, good buddy.
At AM 1400 KVFD.
Well, I just made a real mistake here. Arnie Clausen, by the way, passed away, and his funeral was last Saturday. So I picked up the wrong copy on Arnie Clausen. Mr. Clausen's funeral was last Saturday, and there will be no no visitation this Friday for Mr. Clausen either, as his funeral has already taken place. Anyway, we have a question here from a person, and I would urge on StreamYard. Now, for some reason, Facebook is down today. Facebook's been has been very conflicted here lately, to say the very least. So I don't know if that has anything to do the allegations against Facebook. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. A pretty powerful segment on Facebook last night on 60 Minutes, actually.
Yeah, but then to have Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, all of them down. That's a pretty significant security breach or whatever it is that has caused that. I mean, if you think about all the millions of people using that at any given time.
Well, Zuckerberg was probably out trying to sell his product, as he always is, trying to make some money. Don't be loser and all that. Wasn't that what the Inquisition about, the Spanish Inquisition? They were beating up on the Jews because the Jews turned into merchants and were obsessed with money.
Well, there were multiple different iterations of the Inquisition. And I think some of it was that, but I think there were other issues too that I'm a little foggy in that part of my church history. So
church doesn't like to talk about it.
That's a good point. I didn't really learn a whole lot about it in seminary, to be honest. I'd have to go back and read some of my history books.
Yeah, that's where it come from.
Yeah.
Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, his father was a scholar, a Jewish scholar, of course, and he's written about the Inquisition. Fascinating book. It's a little thick. You have to be a real history buff to get through that.
You got to be pretty dedicated.
I mean, it's almost an academic work.
Yeah.
But they're and I'm not going to lay it all on the Spanish, because there were pogroms of Jews, usually around the subject of money somehow. As a matter of fact, that Jews are always being pounded for being bankers, and European bankers.
I mean, that was kind of even part of the sticking point with the Holocaust. You know, and kind of blaming all the economic woes of Germany on Jews for kind of gaming the system and whatever else, and trying to find some sort of scapegoat as Germany was rising to power after the First World War.
Yes. Well, the Jews can't do anything right. First of all, they were refused admission to the guilds. Now, in the early Middle Ages, the guilds were barrel makers and wheel makers and masons, and it was mainly Christian people, and nobody let the Jews in. But the subject of money, taking care of money, was so repellent, especially in France, that they allowed the Jews to do this. Okay, you Jews sit over here and take care of this money because you're Jews.
With the thought is that that would kind of make your morality subject.
Yeah, really, because this is good enough for you. You can handle the money over here, but we'll sit over here and make wheels.
Yeah, we'll do this more high and mighty, morally upright kind of work.
That's right. Kind of backfired on the wheel makers and barrel makers of the world, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, earlier in the first segment, we were talking still just about money and even just a Christian thought about how do we use our wealth? Is ambition
yes.
Is that wrong or sinful to have ambition? And I think, honestly, the biggest part of it, I go back to the parable of the talents, where Jesus tells this story of kind of a property owner or a wealthy master who has 3 servants, and he gives these monetary units to each of them. I believe it's 10, 5, and 1. And then they all go back and they're supposed to create a yield. And so the one with 10, or maybe he has 5 and then he comes back with 5 more, and so that he has 10, and the other one has 2 and then he makes another 2. So he has 4. And then the one with 1 doesn't do anything with it and just kind of holds on to it, doesn't invest it, and then comes back still with 1. And the master is displeased with him. And I think part of the takeaway for that is this idea of, are we using what God has given us? To some, maybe God has given 5 talents. Others, God has given 2, or others, even just God has given 1. And I think the question is a matter of use. How do we use what God has given, whether it's a lot or a little? And to some, people have been given a lot. I don't think that necessarily means that they're more favored by God, or I don't think that that means that they're any worse off. It just means they have maybe more responsibility to use what they've been given.
I've heard people, very wealthy Christian people, do that. I mean, Danny Thomas, for example, the famous actor Danny Thomas, who's been gone for many years, but he still has a children's hospital, and it's funded primarily by very wealthy Christian people.
Yeah.
I think Danny Thomas, as the story goes, do you remember who I'm talking about, Danny Thomas?
I don't.
Okay. Danny Thomas was a comedian and entertainer, and he had a television show when I was a kid called Make Room for Daddy, and then it was the Danny Thomas Show, I think. But he was a very likable type guy, and he was at a low point in his life, and he asked God to help him.
Yeah.
Well, he continued on in a short while, and his prayers were answered.
Huh.
He became a big success and made a lot of money. So he had promised God in this low point that he would use his money and wealth and position for good and for Christian charities. And he did, and it has outlived him by many years now, very many years. He was a Lebanese Christian, by the way.
Interesting.
If that makes any difference, I don't know. I don't know if Lebanese Christians are Christian Coptics or...
So was he Lebanese in his ethnicity as well?
Yes, he was a Lebanese in his ethnicity. You're correct. Yeah.
So, I mean, there could be a fair amount of different sects from Lebanon. I know that there would be Catholics, maybe some Orthodox.
Certainly, yeah.
And maybe Coptics as well. I don't know as much about Coptic Christians in terms of their presence there in Lebanon, but yeah, I mean, I think that is the kind of story that any of us can really get behind. And I think, we can see, okay, well, if this person has been given this material wealth, and if they're using it for good, if they're using it for the kingdom of God, if they're generous with it, I think that makes sense. The hard part is, especially in our day and age, it seems like we all can identify someone who has more money than us. And then especially if they're a Christian, we can say, well, they shouldn't have that much money. And the challenge then is, how do we decide when it's too much?
Well, let's take a look at Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg for a minute.
Well, yeah.
Well, I can't narrow a focus on him, but I believe, and I don't think this is paranoid conspiracy theory, that the wealthiest people in the country run the country. I think they run the major parties, and I think in this last election that proved true. Nobody wanted Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee. They really didn't. Joe was an old fellow of the old school. Who knew? There was more enthusiasm for Elizabeth Warren and
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, yes, in the Democratic Party. But the Wall Street financiers, who decide really who's going to get all the money, let the Democrats know that if you nominate either one of those people, we're not going to fund your campaign, which means that Trump would have most certainly won.
Yeah.
The Democrats, I don't think they panicked. Nancy Pelosi is a greedy woman. And Joe Biden used to be known as Senator Credit Card. He was always taking care of credit card companies in his home state of Delaware. So, and one of the first things Biden did after he got the nomination is go to the wealthy people and say, nothing's really going to change. And I bet it doesn't.
Well, I mean, I think
bet it doesn't.
To some degree, we're all self-preservationists like that. We all have our own interests, so we want the people in power to protect them.
But the point is, it seems as if business is running. I mean, they're going to run Trump, or Trump enthusiastically embraces him. Yes, what do you need? I'll cut your taxes.
Well, even his own brand, I mean, his own business, was pretty significant. I mean, so much of Trump was just about his name. I mean, whatever gets his name out there more for good or ill is in his best interest.
No such thing as bad publicity.
Exactly. And so I think going back to how we use our finances for the kingdom of God, money does make things happen. And I really like even the story where someone comes to Jesus and they say, should we pay our taxes? And they're trying to trap Jesus. And he says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And I think what Jesus is saying with that is essentially like, he's not going to get caught up in whatever government is or isn't in power or whatever else. I mean, let those systems be whatever they're going to be. I think those systems, by and large, are neutral. And how do we use those systems? How do we leverage the systems that we are a part of for the kingdom of God? Whether that's political parties, whether that's Wall Street, or our own retirement, or our own financial trajectory. I think those are all instances where we can use what we've been given for a greater purpose. And I think I would challenge us to really consider, maybe even sacrificially, what we can give to use our resources for the kingdom of God.
I have no problem with some wealthy person paying off my mortgage as a matter of Christian faith or that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, it gets sketchy, especially when you think about significant large church pastors and who make quite a lot of money.
Oh, they live well, don't they?
And they do very much. And once Instagram comes back online, you can check out the account Preachers and Sneakers, for example. Or Prophets and Watches. These are two different accounts that just show influential pastors in the preaching moment wearing sometimes $1,000 tennis shoes, and it'll zoom in on their shoes, and then it'll show what that shoe is going for currently on the internet. And there's no commentary; it's just the pastor and their shoes and how much those shoes cost.
Yeah. And
then the Prophets and Watches site does the same thing, but it zooms in on their watches. And these pastors, they're wearing $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 watches sometimes.
Oh yeah,
easily. And so we all look at that and think, oh my goodness, there's no reason a pastor should ever have that much money. They should be giving it away.
Apparently God gave it to them for their good work here.
Exactly. It's some kind of sign of God's blessing or God's favor. But now the hard part is, I think every one of us can identify someone who makes more than us, and every one of us can probably identify somebody who makes less than us. So if we're only basing what we give off of comparing ourselves to other people, then we're going to continually be missing the mark. We're always going to be kind of chasing the other person. I think it really comes down to, what is God calling us to give? And it should be something sacrificial. I think we really should truly give sacrificially, whether that's to a church or to other charities or other organizations in town. And for some, what's sacrificial might be quite a lot more than others. But I do think we are called to leverage what we have been given, whether that's our finances, our abilities, our time, whatever it is. Use what we have given for the kingdom of God.
I've called up the website Preachers of Sneakers, and
Uh-huh.
A man by the name of Ben Kirby founded this, and he's written a book.
And he was anonymous until he was going to write his book.
Right. The book is entitled Preachers and Sneakers, Authenticity in an Age of For-Profit Faith and Wannabe Celebrities.
Interesting.
Well, you know, we still remember from the 1980s, maybe it was before your time, Jim and Tammy Faye
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Baker had golden toilets.
And I think there's a big documentary that I think their son, Jay Baker, maybe just came out with.
I think so. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But that was a disgrace, and there are plenty of them out there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to recognize.
There's that minister from Texas got a helicopter pad on his grounds of his home.
Is that Joel Osteen, maybe?
No,
or
that's not Joel Osteen. It's a real fire and brimstone guy.
No.
I gotta find out. What was the name of the other website that you mentioned?
Prophets and Watches.
Prophets and Watches.
That's the one where you see the $20,000, $30,000 Rolexes on some of these pastors. I mean, it's just incredible thinking about that level of wealth. And I think while it feels good for us to point the finger at these prophets and watches, for example, I think the harder work is to look in the mirror and ask ourselves where we are maybe where we are being overly extravagant, and where we ought to maybe leverage what we are given a little bit more faithfully. And what I like about that guy is he'll sometimes point out when a pastor has just an ordinary watch on too. But it's a sort of good accountability to point out, yeah, that guy Chad Veach, he's a pastor down in L.A. and he wears all this
A
hipster
Royal
clothing.
Oak watch.
Yeah, wearing a $22,000 watch.
And a $5,000 suit.
Yeah, and then they'll often say something like, "Oh, well, this was a gift," and it's like, well, fine, it was a gift, but what do you do with that gift?
Kenneth Copeland was a guy.
Oh yeah,
Kenneth Copeland. He kind of tones it down a little bit. He only wears a watch worth $13,500.
Yeah, he's kind of a middle of the road guy, right?
But I think he does have the helicopter pad somewhere.
Yeah.
Here's Gabriel Swaggart. I wonder if that's Jimmy's relatives. Of course, Jimmy had his own problems, and he's really wearing it cheap, but $3,750.
Yeah, I mean, does he even deserve to be listened to with that cheap of a watch?
None of these guys do. Copeland, I watched him for years just so he could reaffirm my suspicion that people who preach about God know nothing about God at all and don't care. This was a hustle.
Especially on TV.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We used to, back in the 80s, I was out working at a rock station out in North Carolina, and there was a pastor by the name of Ernest Ainsley, who was in Ohio at the time. And Ernest Ainsley was always selling you something. He was almost as bad as Oral Roberts.
Wow.
Well, we made so much fun of him, and other people made so much fun of him, and he disappeared for a while. He's back on the air. He's the guy that sells you the packets of Miracle Water. That guy is Ernest Ainsley.
Wow.
We used to call him Ernest Strangely, Pastor Ernest Strangely. We even there was one guy who could do an impersonation of his voice, and his voice hasn't changed. He's, "I'll give you the Miracle Water, and your life will change."
It sounds so creepy.
It's exactly the point.
Yeah.
Especially on the radio where you couldn't see him.
Oh man.
He sounded so creepy. And then you turned in the television, and there he was with his hair dyed, or maybe even a weird tattoo, and he'd look into the camera. He's just, a hustler.
Yeah.
If he was selling cars, you'd run for the hills. But
Yeah.
if he's selling you Miracle Water or Bibles or something. So what kind of watch you got on there, Pastor?
I've got an Apple Watch.
Apple Watch. And how much was that?
About $250. So it's not that cheap.
I bet the priests still wear bullavas.
Yeah. Well, I was for a long time I had a Casio or a Timex.
Yep. A Casio or a Timex.
Exactly. And that's where it's hard, I mean, where does one draw the line? Do I need a $250 watch? No, not at all. That Casio or the Timex would do just fine. And so to some degree it's societally based, what's just the kind of the norm societally. I think in that sense, optics means something, what's the impression other people have. But even there, at the end of the day, I think really what it comes down to is, what is God calling us to do with the resources we have been given? In church language, we talk about stewardship and this idea that I'm a steward of the things that I have, meaning it's not mine, it's God's. And I've been entrusted with the responsibility to use well what I have been given, whether that's my body, my time here on earth, my money, my house, my car, my property, whatever it might be. I am simply a steward of what God has given. And I think every one of us, we sometimes do a better job of stewarding those things well than other times. But that's something with fear and trembling we should probably all be going before the Lord and asking about.
Certainly. My mother's still alive. She might be listening online. I don't know. And I don't mean to pick on her, but of course she was and is a dedicated Catholic. And my father and other unpleasant people used to point out that the priests used to get new cars every year.
Mm-hmm.
She'd argue strenuously that they deserved it because they had given up so much through celibacy. When I got a little older, I weighed those options: new cars, celibacy. What are we talking about here? Maybe I'll just forego the celibacy and if I got to drive around on a bicycle, okay. But
exactly.
I ain't going.
It still doesn't sound like a fair trade.
It really doesn't. So, have we come to any conclusion today?
I
We
think-
just babbled for
I
45
think
minutes.
the world is watching. The world is watching what Christians do with their money. The world is watching what the church does with their money. And that should give us pause. That should hold us to account. And I think the more we are willing to give sacrificially, I think the more that authentically lives out the faith we are called to live.
Yeah, this is a real thing. Christianity is a real thing. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ is a real person, and these hustlers drive me nuts. Jim Baker won't let it go. He did a prison stretch, which he really shouldn't have. I mean, he had gotten so unpopular. He and his wife were so bizarre that people just lusted after his blood almost. He did a prison sentence, and he got out and he wrote a book called "I Was Wrong," with a picture of him on the book with a sad face. I was wrong.
And I wonder how much money he made from that book saying he was wrong.
I don't know, but probably he doesn't have a gold toilet lids anymore, or
I don't think they had gold toilets in prison.
or an air-conditioned doghouse.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Anyway, I'm glad we did address this subject, so we can draw a thin, bright line between these greed heads babbling about Jesus and the real faith.
And here we are babbling about Jesus too.
Yes, we are. But babbling about Jesus is okay if we live according to the tenets of Christianity. If you're just using the tenets of Christianity to cash in, I'd say that's something else. Thank you, Pastor.
My pleasure.
3:00 in the afternoon, KBFD for done.
If you're into cars or just want to learn a thing or two, tune in every Saturday afternoon from 2 till 4 for the Under the Hood Car Show on AM 1400 KVFD, Fort Dodge.
Will Congress beat the clock again? I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. After avoiding a government shutdown last week, Congress has 2 weeks left to avoid default by suspending or raising the nation's debt limit.
Republicans say they will not do their part
I'm going to be a little cranky, but
Well, I just got back from Colorado Springs yesterday, and I was out there for my 50th college reunion.
Oh,
and
at
it
the Air
was,
Force Academy.
Yes, and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience.
All right, it sounds great. Any well-known people show up?
Well, other than me?
Yeah, other than you. Yes, sir. Other than you. You are no doubt the most famous alumni.
I don't know about that. We have a lot of guys that were pretty legendary in their time. So, yeah, we were, in fact, we were regaling each other of our exploits when we were younger men.
Of course, that's what reunions are for. I just had a 51st class reunion. No, I don't know if we regaled ourselves with what we regaled each other as high school students, because what do high school students know? We were just kids,
Well,
we were just kids.
Well, I don't know that we knew a lot more as I think one of the comments that I had made there says we came in here when we were 17 and stupid, and by the time we graduated, we're 21. We knew everything. So,
Yeah.
it was, that's kind of the way it worked.
Yeah, a classmate of mine, he didn't come to this reunion, but he is a graduate of the Air Force Academy. What year did he graduate? Would have been 74, I guess. He graduated 74.
He would have been a freshman my senior year.
Yeah. That's no doubt. Anyway, Sam Clovis has served in the Trump administration. He had a long career in the Air Force. He's a pilot. And, of course, talk radio host, which is probably his most skilled position today.
like baseball, it's the thing that seemed most natural to me.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Why are the Democrats scared to death of Donald Trump? They are ever since Trump won, they've been shocked, panicked, freaked out. And by the way, we're going to talk about this information that's come out about the FBI having an informant inside the group that illegally stormed the Capitol and almost overthrew our democracy. Oh my God. It was just terrible. Those guys weren't going to overthrow anything.
No.
But the point of it is that the FBI had information the day before that something may happen. But actually, the real information told us so far is that there was no disturbance planned. Let me say that again, ladies and gentlemen. According to this investigation of the FBI, and there are elements in the FBI, that were never friendly to Donald Trump. According to these documents, the FBI knew there was no violence of any kind planned for January the 6th. Somehow, perhaps an agent provocateur, there was some unseemly behavior, but rising to the level of a full-blown revolution, nonsense. Yeah, I'll tell you, a guy who wears horns and furs is not going to overthrow the government. He just isn't.
I'm laughing because it seems like every day we find out just how deep and broad the corruption inside the FBI is, and the fact that they would withhold this information
for months,
and for months, and then it goes back to the whole Russia collusion thing, where there was absolutely no indication that the Trump administration, Trump campaign, was colluding with Russia on any level at any time with anyone. And yet they were able to turn a stupid, bad, anonymously sourced story by Michael Isikoff and turn that into a full-blown FISA investigation that ruined the lives of dozens of people.
Oh.
That corruption needs to be purged. And if that means you have to go to the FBI and you start going down the list and you just say, you're not coming to work anymore. Anybody at the level of the senior executive service in the FBI, that person is fired, and fire them all. And then we start over. Now that's a purge. That's called the purge. And we have a lot of, we don't have much experience with purges, but there are societies that do. And I'm not afraid to do that if that's what it takes at the FBI. And by the way, while we're at it, why don't we go over to the Department of Defense and start to do that over there as well? And, I think that most of those people have probably have pretty cushy retirement plans already set up. So, why in the heck don't they just do that? And we'll just scrape the top off of everything here, and then we'll get right down to the good soil, and then we'll work it from there. Because what we have right now is rotten. It is rotten meat, and it stinks to high heaven.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that guy from Des Moines who was pictured famously so-called chasing that officer up the stairs, Doug Jensen, he served months in jail. He got out. Then he used his computer, and he was sent back to prison for using his computer. There's something going on. I mean, these are harsh measures being taken. And I don't know what's behind it other than harsh, mean-spirited partisanship. Because I'll tell you, if you want to see somebody that's mean and cruel, find somebody who's a Democrat. They are really mean-spirited.
Well, I think so. And I think that the idea is that they have to have an authoritarian, centralized government where they cannot get their agenda through. And I think that the Constitution and the checks and balances and all of the aspects of our government, our constitutional republic, interfere with their agenda. This is why they're afraid of Trump. And frankly, the establishment on the Republican Party is every bit as afraid of Trump as the Democrats are. And the reason is because Trump is beholden to no one. Trump is able to go out and stir the people of this country, the people who have been disenfranchised.
That's right.
The people who've been abandoned, and the people on whose backs the next $8 trillion is going to be asked to be paid for. Now, if you take a look at all of the things that Biden wants to tax, all of the things that are out there, the squeeze is on, and it's going to continue to be on. And more people are not going to be paying anything in income tax, and fewer and fewer people are going to be paying a much higher burden. Now that's not fair. That's not just. The world isn't fair. I get that. But I think that if you really want to get, and you want the rich to pay more of what's going on, you get a consumption tax out there. Do a fair tax. Because they buy boats, they buy houses, they buy expensive things, they buy expensive pens and watches.
Sure.
Go out there and put it on a consumption tax. And there are ways to build the fair tax program that then what are you doing? You're taxing what people do as opposed to what people earn. Because what they earn, they ought to get to keep. And then they spend whatever they need to spend. And then that's where the true consumption tax takes place. And there are ways to make that more equitable up and down the entire economic ladder. And I'm furious at the fact that the Republicans seem to be sitting on their hands and not raising holy heck about all of the stuff that's going on in Washington. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they would frankly rather be in the minority. That way they can raise hell, raise money, and not do anything.
Those were the old days, that's for sure.
Well, I don't think much has changed, Mike.
I do want to get back to this great fear of Donald Trump. I mean,
yes.
That's obvious that there's just a blind panic in the Democratic Party about Donald Trump.
Right.
Now, not only are they afraid of Trump, they're afraid of a Republican majority, that they will be swept in 2024. They're going to lose, they know, in 2022, but they're afraid of being swept because, I mean, look at this disastrous President Joe Biden's presidency. I mean, Cindy Axley is taking out full-page ads in the Des Moines Register already and running commercial after commercial on television stations all around Des Moines. The Democrats are afraid she's going to lose, and they're doing that all over the country. They're really afraid of Donald Trump.
Well, why do you think they're afraid of Donald Trump?
Because he beat them with Twitter. That's why. Because he can beat them any way that he wants to beat them. That's why he's not on Twitter. That's not why he's allowed on Facebook. Is because despite having, yes, there is such a thing as an elite liberal media, despite having all of these resources at their command, Donald Trump beats him when he wants to. He beats him when he wants to.
Well, I think so, but I still think that there's a lingering issue. I still have problems with my own party, the Republican Party.
Why is that?
Over this? Well, I do, because I think that the establishment of the Republican Party is every bit as anti-Trump as the Democrats are. And I know you may not agree with that, but that's my assessment of what I see. Because you do not see anyone out there talking about and defending the Trump agenda. And that to me, the Trump agenda was a good agenda, because it was a person who came in with an administration that was going to keep the promises that he made. And we worked diligently to do that. I know. I have bloody knuckles and elbows from doing all of that stuff. And the fact of the matter is that when Donald Trump came to Washington, D.C., he caused a major disturbance in the swamp. And it really did. It riled everybody. And it wasn't just riling up the Democrats, because we know them. We can deal with them. We know what the Democrat agenda is. What we have the most trouble with is the Republicans who get weak-kneed and spineless when it comes to standing up and taking a stand on things. We had a Republican majority for 2 years when Donald Trump took office and got virtually nothing accomplished through Congress except for the tax bill. And we could have done immigration reform. We could have done we did get major foreign policy things done, but we could have reestablished the readiness of our military. We could have done a lot of those things, but Congress sat on their hands and wouldn't move forward because they were not going to allow Donald Trump to disrupt the gravy train that most of these Jacobins are on, that we have inside inside Congress and the administration.
Well, there's there is part of that there. I cannot deny that. How would Trump be a threat to that, especially if you're a Republican?
Well, I think the reason is because he is not. He does not have to cotton to the fact that what we came to do in Washington, D.C. on the 20th of January, 2017, every single political appointee had the same mantra. We are here to do what is best for the American people.
Oh, yeah.
That goes against the grain of people who are in the pockets of special interest.
Oh, yeah.
United States Chamber of Commerce. You name the special interest. Just the sugar lobby, for God's sake. Think about the ethanol and the burden that ethanol economically places on America, because it is in fact a subsidy. We are out there subsidizing, and then 40% of the corn that's grown in the country goes for the production of ethanol. and ethanol has no infrastructure, and big oil is in a big fight. And yet what we don't do is we don't complete the Keystone XL pipeline, and we don't go out here and put ourselves in a position to be an energy exporter instead of an energy importer.
That's a sin, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is. Now think about all of the things that would be, we are here to go forward, and what Donald Trump wanted to accomplish and do what was best for the American people, that our own party stood in the way of.
You think the Republicans stood in the way of that?
Absolutely. I was there, Mike. I watched it every day. I watched the special interests, the lobbyists that roam around the halls of those big, great buildings up on the hill that go into those palatial offices of our senators and members of Congress. And you go into there, and I suppose that's okay, but those lobbyists go in there and they make it very clear that this is what the money that's going to go to your PAC. These are the issue ads that we'll put up in your district. These are all of the things, but you've got to see things our way. The Republican leadership is going to sit there and say, you have to go this way. And you know.
We lost Sam again. Doggone it. Well, we'll get him back. We'll go to the news, and then we'll talk with Sam Clovis once again.
Divine Intervention is online at yourfortdodge.com, on Twitter at jmike1400.
Okay, Sam's coming back on. Sam, I thought we'd just go ahead and take our break, news break.
Okay.
And if you can call us back in 8 minutes, that'd be great.
All right, I'll call you back in 8 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we are broadcasting from the Blue Ribbon Pelham Motors studio at 612 South 32nd Street here in Fort Dodge. You may contact Blue Ribbon Pelham Motors by calling 576-6481 or online at www.ftwater.com. The news is coming up.
This is Mike from United Bank of Iowa. It's time to work hard, bank smart, and look good. Right now, at United Bank of Iowa, when you open a new checking account with a $200 deposit, you will receive a free Carhartt hoodie. You will love the versatility of this hoodie, but the best part will be your new checking account. Call United Bank of Iowa or stop in, and we'll help you choose the right account for you. We look forward to seeing you soon at United Bank of Iowa, Fort Dodge, member FDIC.
Cleanliness and safety are essential to the success of any business. That's why Cintas has introduced our Total Clean program, a one-of-a-kind service that includes scheduled deliveries of essential cleaning supplies, hygienically cleaned uniforms, and on-site sanitizer and disinfectant services to help eliminate germs. Learn what the Cintas Total Clean program can do for you.
Oh, I'm ready!
Visit Cintas.com and get ready for the workday.
Listen to this station anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Odyssey. That's AUDACY.
Upper Des Moines Opportunity is now taking applications for Alpha Media's Bikes for Tykes event, sponsored by W&H Co-op and R&J Material Handling. If you want a brand new bike for your child for Christmas, you must apply by calling Upper Des Moines Opportunity now at 576-7774. Application deadline is November 24th.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
From the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom, this is KVFD News. Fort Dodge City buildings will be closed for staff development this Thursday morning. Facilities impacted include City Hall, Police Administration, Fire Administration, Airport Administration, Fort Dodge Public Library, Blandon Art Museum, and Public Works. Offices regularly open to the public will reopen at noon. The Yard Waste site will be open regular hours. More information is available at fortdodgeiowa.org. Applications are now open for the 2022 Healthiest State Annual Awards. There are 7 categories for the Healthiest State Initiative Annual Awards, including workplace, healthcare, education, and more. Applications are due at 5 p.m. on October 29th, and finalists will be announced in January of next year. All finalists will be recognized, and winners in each category will be revealed in a virtual ceremony scheduled for February of next year. Each winner will be awarded a monetary prize to contribute towards a health and wellness-related project that benefits their employees, students, or fellow citizens. The Healthiest State Annual Awards are supported by Wellmark Blue Cross and Blue Shield, the Iowa Department of Public Health, Health Partners Unity Point Health, Malvern Bank, and Iowa Medical Society. To learn more about the Healthiest State Annual Awards and to apply, go to iowahealthieststate.com/awards. From Radio Iowa, the state's Crime Victim Assistance Division is receiving nearly $13 million from the U.S. Justice Department, but the director of the division says that's not enough to keep up with the need. Director Sandy Murphy says the money is used to help support victims of crimes.
Like funeral benefits, medical bill coverage, therapy, that sort of thing. And then the largest portion of it sponsors our grant program, which goes out to help provide funding for victim service agencies across the state. And those are domestic abuse centers, sexual assault centers, shelters.
The federal funding comes from the Victims of Crime Act, or VOCA, which puts federal criminal fines, penalties, and bond forfeitures into a fund paid out to the state. Murphy says their amount of funding has dropped as more federal cases aren't followed through or fines paid.
This amount this year is at least an 8% reduction to what we received last year, which was also lower than the year before.
Murphy says they will continue working to find other dollars to help those programs remain viable. For KVFD News, I'm Josh Mason.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFD weatherology forecast. Ample sunshine expected this afternoon with a high of 75. Northerly winds 8 to 15 miles per hour. Lows level off around 50. Tonight, mainly clear skies and quiet. Tomorrow, highs level off around 74. Mid-70s Wednesday and Thursday with a chance for scattered rain showers Thursday. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 77.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. December corn down 3/4 cent at 5.40 3/4. March unchanged on the day to close at 5.49 3/4. May up 1/4 penny at 5.54 3/4. July up 1/2 cent at 5.55 1/2. November soybeans down 10 3/4 at 12.35 3/4. January down 10 1/4 at 12.46 1/4. March down 9 1/4 at 12.55 1/4. May down 7 1/4 at 12.65 1/4. Soybean meal down $2.90 a ton at 322.10. December wheat closed up 1 1/4 at 756 1/2. October live cattle up 222 at 122.62. December up 285 at 128.05. October feeders up 225 at 155. November up 212 at 155.02. In the hog trade, October lean hogs down 150 at 90.80. December down 207 at 83.10. I'm Dwayne Murley.
American persimmon fruit is part of the fall landscape in the woods in many parts of the country and is loaded with nutrients. Hi, I'm Julie Harker with Healthy Living on Brownfield. Persimmons are small orange-colored fruits when ripe that grow on persimmon trees. You can use the pulp for sweet treats including bread, cookies, pudding, and pies, even fudge. An unripe persimmon is incredibly tart and will literally make your lips pucker. So it's recommended you pick them up once they've fallen from the tree to the ground and the skin is saggy and the fruit is soft. That's usually around the time of the first frost. Persimmons are often called nature's candy. Remove the seeds by straining them through a colander to get the pulp. Persimmons are considered a nutrient-dense food because they carry so many nutrients in a small package. They are high in fiber and vitamin C and are a good source of iron and calcium. They've been part of the diet of Native Americans and explorers and settlers and can be enjoyed today. The fruit is globe-shaped, about 1 inch wide and 1 inch long, or larger. They're a bit smaller than a plum. The folklore about persimmons is the seeds carry predictions for the severity of the coming winter. By splitting the seed to see if the inside looks like a knife, meaning extremely cold, a fork meaning a mild winter, or a spoon meaning a lot of snow. Wild persimmons grow mostly in the lower Midwest and southeastern states. I'm Julie Harker with Healthy Living on Brownfield.
Compromise is nice if you're at the playground or scouring yard sales. But farmers know better that middle grounds have no winner. That's why there's Revitec fungicide, fast-acting and long-lasting, preventative and curative, disease control and stress reduction.
So leave the settling to little Tommy at the seesaw, an old bargain bill, and take your full prize in yields with Revitec fungicide for uncompromised performance. Always read and follow label directions.
Brownfield introduces a new series called Turning Point, focusing on a pivotal moment for individuals in the ag biological space, like Matt Helms, Chief Commercial Officer for New Leaf Symbiotics.
Moving into the 2022 crop year, we're going to offer our Terrasym microbes via planter box. That's a turning point to connect with farmers on how they want to use products in a convenient, scalable way.
Join us on Brownfield's Facebook page every Thursday at noon for a new conversation sponsored by Terrasym.
Grief is a natural part of life. As hard as it is, we must find ways through it and not around it. We at Gundersons help guide families through one of life's most difficult times, the death of a loved one. We are here to listen, hear your stories, and help create healing ceremonies, the first step in acknowledging and honoring your grief. We provide options, support, and answer questions when you need us most. The journey of grief is not one to walk alone. Gundersons is here for you.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD. If you don't listen to him, you suck.
Well, there you go. You suck. And not sucking today is Sam Clovis because he's on the program. So he can't possibly suck. There you go, Sam. Well, at least you accomplished something. There was a Navy admiral, I can't think of his name, but he wrote a book a couple of years ago, and I bought it, called Make Your Bed. Gosh, what? He also wrote a follow-up book called Sea Stories. Navy admiral said, make your bed under the theory that get up every morning and make your bed. That means you accomplished at least one good thing that day. And you got your day started off the right way by making your bed. I have rarely missed making my bed since reading that book. And I was pretty good about it beforehand, but if it didn't happen, I wasn't too shook up. But I have found that little effort, making my bed every day, when I have a lousy day, I can think to myself, I made my bed.
Well, I think that's, I remember my days in the military. And at least when I was a cadet, I would make my bed every morning.
Oh, you bet, man.
Ready for inspection every day, and I don't think people realize that service academies, you're buttoned down from the crack of dawn until the next crack of dawn. There's no, your uniform has to be sharp. The hair has to be short. The beds, the rooms have to be made up, and we even had a regulation on how to fold your underwear.
Oh yeah, you bet.
And everything, and I think that those things carry. I was laughing at when we were having dinner at our banquet on Friday night that. Everybody, grounds your silverware, and everybody grounded their silverware exactly the same, and you could look around this table at the 4 or 5 men that were sitting there, and every one of us had put our knife and fork on the plate exactly the same, and it was, I just was, I found that, yes, you're 54 years later, we're still doing it all the same, and just like we did when we were cadets. It was pretty fun.
People laugh about that, but even as enlisted man in training, there was a way to fold your shorts. You better not screw it up.
No kidding. Well, we had that, everything. I mean, socks, everything had to be, Christine, we had rifles, and then sabers when we were first classmen, and they had to be, there was a way to put them in the room, and the rifles had to be clean. And these are real rifles with firing pins the whole 9 yards, So there was no, these were real weapons that we had, and everything was buttoned down. And I mean, it was just, and for most of us, it's still, I just a quick story. When my wife and I started dating, and I remember the first time she came to visit me at my apartment. shoes lined up on the floor exactly, you know, in great precision. And then the clothes are hung up by long sleeve, short sleeve shirts, and then all the slacks are hung up, you know, and then my suits are hung up. And she said, "This is not going to work." she was a disorderly person when it came to that, and of course it didn't take her long to break me of all of those habits that I had as a military guy.
They'll break the habits for you.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
Sam Clovis is our guest. Of course, he served in the Trump administration and graduated the Air Force Academy, all those things. We were talking a little bit about lobbyists just before the break, so I looked up some information on sugar subsidies. Now, there is no sugar shortage in the world or in the United States at all. However, we do have a U.S. sugar program. And that sugar program benefits about 5 families in Florida to the tune of almost $3 billion. If you want to read it, if you want to read an interesting paper, there is a working paper by 2 ISU researchers by the name of John Begin, Beghin, and Amani Elobeid. They did work in 2013 at Iowa State University Center for Agricultural and Rural Development. Now, these 5 families also put together a lobbying group. Now, remember, their only crop is sugar. And here's the name of the lobbying group: Citizens for Health. Now, sugar has no food value. And it's directly linked to obesity, diabetes, and heart problems. However, Citizens for Health is a group of very high-priced attorneys who lobby against any sort of cutback in sugar subsidies. Now, this is just sugar, okay? 5 families in Florida. If that gives you... By the way, I'll have this piece from Pro Market. It's something from the Stigler Center on my Facebook page shortly, and you can read about it. It's called Meet the Sugar Barons Who Use Both Sides of American Politics to Get Billions in Subsidies. And this was kind of the point of Sam and I's earlier discussion. Right. These sugar barons are pumping up both sides of the aisle. And by golly, both the Republicans and Democrats got their hands out all the time.
If you were in the Department of Agriculture and you shoot mount an assault on the sugar lobby and the collusion that takes place there, and the fact that there are only 469 producers of sugar in the United States, and that you have to have approval of this particular cabal to even become a sugar producer, and the fact that sugar in the United States costs twice as much as it does on the international market. Now, if you're at USDA and you want to poke your finger into that, and people will come to you and say, if you value your career, you will stop, because people have lost their careers, their livelihoods, by taking on the sugar lobby. And I will tell you this, when I heard about the sugar, we were dealing with the sugar issue at USDA when we got there, and I mounted a full-throated assault because I thought what they were doing was detrimental to the people of the United States.
Yeah, it sure is.
My charge was to do what was best for the people of the United States. I got pulled aside and then told in no uncertain terms that if I wanted to remain in Washington and continue to work at USDA, I better shut the hell up. I'm not making that up.
No, I believe you.
I'm not making that up.
No, I didn't think that at all. No, this is some sad stuff. It's scary, and our lives are out of our own control. Anybody who thinks that the people of the United States actually govern the United States is incorrect. I've said this many, many, many times before. Sam, did I tell you this earlier? That, of course, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren were more popular with the Democratic Party base during the 2020 nomination process than Joe Biden was. That's why Joe Biden is having so much trouble governing, because nobody really wanted Joe Biden. He has no base. But he became the nominee of the Democratic Party because Wall Street financiers went to Nancy Pelosi and others and said, if you put Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders at the top of your ticket, we're going to withdraw all funding from your party. Democrats caved in less than a minute. I don't even know if they discussed it. They just instantaneously caved and found Biden and pumped him up. If you remember, again, do you remember just a short time ago? Nobody wanted Biden. Nobody wanted Biden. He was saved by Clyburn and some African Americans in the Southern primaries. But that came with a lot of promises that Biden's trying to deliver on now. A lot of this budget he's talking about is for social programs designed to help African Americans. Now, I'm not trying to comment on the merit of those programs, but I'm saying this is just a payback for saving Biden and saving the Democratic Party.
But I would say this, we don't need new programs. There are 14 job programs. There are 7 preschool education programs. There are countless other programs. There's the SNAP. There's the student nutrition programs. There are countless programs that are out there that benefit minority communities and are all part of the legacies of the New Deal and the Great Society. We don't need new programs. What we need is to clean up the budget, and we need to have people who are responsible in our Congress and who are willing to stand on the floor, publicly make comment about the fact of what is the fact that the American people should govern. I will tell you that the one reputation is one of the things I am most proud of in my service in Washington is that lobbyists did not want to come to the Department of Agriculture, and they did not want to come and speak to the political appointees there, because we were very much focused on doing what was best for the American people. And they knew that they could not bend us at all, and at least the senior people. And I think that is the one thing I'm most proud of in my service to this country in my later years, is the fact that we did what was best for the American people and sent the lobbyists packing.
Well, that's interesting, because the lobbyists are supposed to run Washington, D.C., aren't they?
Well, I think they do. Mike, if you walk the halls there and those big, great buildings up on Capitol Hill, you've been in those offices, you've gone around, I remember the very first time I entered the building where Senator Grassley has his office. I can't think which one it is. And it's beautiful. And we went through this brand new remodel on the inside, whatever. We went through there. The very first person I ran into is one of the best known lobbyists in the city. Very first person. And he came out of his way to come over and introduce himself to me, because he was one of the most prominent agricultural lobbyists in the city. And I never met with him officially, ever. Never met with him, because we just refused to do that. We were not we didn't come there to meet with lobbyists. We came there to help the American people, and that's why we were there. And it really, you could tell that by the influence they had on members of Congress, how we were going to do advancing like the 2018 Farm Bill, things like that. So those were I had a lot of experience in dealing with this, and it was really eye-opening to see the influence, the real influence that lobbyists had.
By the way, before I leave sugar, the Fanjul brothers are Cuban immigrants. They left when Fidel Castro came to power, not surprisingly, because they were sugar barons in Cuba. And the Fanjul brothers, just to show you how politics works, in 2016, the Fanjuls hosted fundraisers for both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, just days apart. It's just ridiculous.
Well, it is. Well, you know, I remember. I can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just
You know you can you?
so bizarre. But we were. I remember, like in the first week, maybe the second week, we were there in D.C. and this is before the secretary was confirmed, and so I had to make the decisions on all of these things. That someone came in and said there had been a petition, or someone had petitioned to become a sugar producer. This was a beet farmer, a sugar beet farmer, a large operation that he wanted to convert his operation to sugar beets, and he had to get approval from the sugar board. Believe it or not, the sugar board, before he would be allowed to bring his beets to market. And he had been approved by the board, so we were then in the position to let him know that he could become one of the less than 500 sugar producers in the United States. By the way, our biggest importer, where we import we produce about 12 million tons of sugar in the United States. We consume about 14 million tons. And so the other 2 million tons of sugar comes from Mexico, but it is not of the purity standard that we have in the United States. So sometimes it has to be re-refined in order to be used in our confectionaries, and that's where most of the sugar goes.
Okay.
Just some detail.
Some detail, you betcha.
Blow the shorts off of anybody listening right now.
Well, they probably deserve and need to have their shorts blown off every now and then. So that's what we try to do in talk radio, right? Blow your shorts off every now and then.
Every day. That's why we're so evil. That's why talk radio hosts are so evil.
Oh, that's right. We lack compassion. We're mean. We don't care about people's feelings. Let me say again that in defense of men our age and Sam Clovis's age and my age, nobody cared about our feelings, and as it turned out, we were better off for it because we had to handle things our own way and figure things out. Even when it was difficult, there was no mommy to run to, be it a government mommy or your real mommy or any of those things. Stand up, be an adult, deal with it, and don't run in front of the television cameras or microphones every 5 minutes complaining that somebody hurt your damn feelings. Jeez.
Did you ever get a participation trophy?
I never did, Sam. I won or I lost.
Exactly.
Nobody cared about my self-esteem necessarily.
That's why you keep score.
That's
If it didn't matter, you wouldn't keep score.
That's right. God, they were all apparently there was an LGBTQ parade over the weekend in Des Moines. Fine, wonderful. I'm turned on by the whole thing. But there was a lot of concern about the feelings of the people in the parade, as if they could never be wounded or hurt, or we were all just terrible people because they felt bad. To which I responded, shut up. There I was, a grown man yelling at my TV. Will you shut up with that whining? How did whining get to be an acceptable form of expression? How did whining and nonstop self-pity turn out to be legitimate ways to change social policy? How did it happen?
I was thinking, I can reflect back on what I was going through prisoner of war training. When I was getting the hell beat out of me, and I was thinking
My feelings. I'll tell you something, Sam. I don't think they cared. You know.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't.
I didn't have to go to prisoner of war camps, but I actually knew somebody who was one of the guys working in the prisoner of war camp. And he told me very matter of factly and without any regret about kicking around the recruits. Pretty much, I guess it was a several-week program. In some places.
Well, we had about 54 hours under high duress, and then we had about 5 days of survival.
Okay.
Trek. And in fact, I ran into one of my Trek buddies at the reunion. He and I were good friends, and the other guy, the third guy in our team was one of my best friends, and he passed away in 2013. That was one thing that just on a more sober note, that we had a memorial service on Saturday afternoon, and we had lost 78 of the 692 that graduated.
No.
And it was one of the best memorial remembrances. It was intimate. It was heartfelt. And it was the guys, and we had a lot of spouses there, but it was really an incredible thing. And that was another thing that I really felt great about, was the fact that I've known some of these women 50 years as well, and it was great to see them and to be able to reunite in a family way, to know that these. To know how people have progressed, and the fact that these friendships that we had so long when we were so young, and they are still as fresh and as strong today.
All right, Sam, we got to go. Thank you for that.
Okay.
All right, we'll talk with you next week. Sam Clovis, ladies and gentlemen, at AM 1400 KVFT.
Did you know that United Healthcare helps connect you to doctors and therapists with 24/7 access to virtual care?
So I could have therapy from my couch?
Yep.
Or a doctor appointment from my car?
If you wanted to.
Wait, you're right. I don't even like when people see me sing in the car. Couch appointment it is. Virtual visits are just one of the ways United Healthcare helps connect you to better health. Learn more at uhc.com. Plan benefits may
Joining the program is Joe Coleman, who's probably the mayor of Manville and Clare. I don't know. Are you the mayor of Manville and Clare? Are you, Joe, or not?
I'm very proud to be from that community.
Yes?
A lot of good people out there.
There's no doubt about it. Did they open up a little store there again, or a little convenience store? They had one there for years. I used to go through Clare all the time on the way to see my wife's family in Pocahontas County, but I think it closed a number of years ago. Did they ever get something going again? Oh, that's, yeah, I do know there is a watering hole, that's for sure. But the church isn't open anymore, is it?
That is correct.
Yeah. What do you think of the Diocese of Sioux City in their decision to close all of the Catholic churches in Webster County, except for a big one here in Fort Dodge?
Well, you know, that's always a mixed bag, and it's never easy. Those decisions are made. My ancestors sweated nickels to build that brick church out in Clare. And
oh, yeah.
When it closed, that was hard. But I also realized that the church that we have now, Holy Trinity, is a wonderful house of worship, and I think is accepted by all, gosh, I want to say almost 11 parishes that existed one time in Webster County.
Yeah, I knew of 8, and there were probably more, that's for sure. But I know they had that beautiful church over in Duncombe. And the people over there, they had ancestors, grandparents, those sort of things, who dug that the basement of that church by hand and built the church. And there was no, they owned the church free and clear, is what I'm trying to say. Catholic Church decided to close it down, then tried to sell the pews and some of the stained glass to the parishioners who bought them in the first place. I think there was a few raw feelings about that.
Well, there is no doubt that when a church in a community is like the school in a community, when it closes, the community begins to lose some of the character that it formerly had. But, you know, you and I have talked a little bit about this before. When we disagree with decisions that our government makes, we don't cease to become Americans. We still are Americans. And you know, our church is made up of human beings, and human beings make mistakes. And we have to look beyond that. We have to look at that second commandment. Why is it like that nobody ever has any problems with the first commandment? Love God.
Right.
Never. Have you ever run into anybody who says, society God tries to convince everybody that they should turn for God? I've never run into anything like that argument from the world. But when you get to that second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself.
Well, you know the story, though. I mean, we may love our government or be proud to be Americans in the type of government that we have. But a church is a much more personal thing. That's where you have funerals and weddings and baptisms. I mean, these are deeply personal things to people. And when a diocese does this, and there's always a suspicion that the diocese is doing this to pay, and I've done research on this is false, but there's always a suspicion in this day and age where we're closing churches to pay off child abuse cases. And again, I've done some research, and that was not the case at all in regard to the closings of the church in Webster County. You're breaking up here, Joe. Joe, are you there? Hello, Joe.
Lost you, but I did. Mike, you got me?
I got you now, yeah.
Okay, I don't know how we lost because I promised myself that I would not move out of the chair in front of my desk. As you and I talked a couple of weeks ago, you asked me that question, and I absolutely did the research with the diocese, and you're exactly exactly right. That was absolutely false. It had absolutely nothing to do with any payments or anything like that. But, you know, rumors persist. You know, there's some people who still believe the earth's flat. And I can't, you know, you and I can't correct that, Mike.
No, we can't. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. Our guest is Joe Cohen. He's a deacon in the Catholic Church, among other things. Pastor Austin Hill was in here a little earlier, and we talked about filthy looser. You're old enough to remember that term. I kind of threw him a curveball when I said it. But we were talking about the love of money and the various Christian denominations' attitude toward money. And I related to Pastor Hill that in my youth, the priest would pray for the wealthy or pray for those who desired wealth. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
I'm certainly listening to where this is going. I'm not making judgments till you get to the punchline.
All right, I'm going to get to the punchlines. Our Catholics, a lot of Protestant denominations think that the Catholic people are poor because of their reliance on the church. That the church's position on money and making money gets in the way of actually, let me put it this way, that the church should be first, and we should not, if you're a Catholic, the church should be first, and that any emphasis on making money should be second or third, or maybe not even part of the equation, because to have that sort of ambition to make a lot of money is somehow God disapproves of that, because Jesus, of course, was a poor man. He presented himself on earth as a carpenter, and he was apparently homeless his entire life. So do you think that the Catholic Church has that position today, or do you think that they ever did?
Well, you know, the lawyer in me is always skeptical of how the questions are phrased.
I understand. It took me quite a while to put that one together, too.
So here's the deal, from my point of view, okay? And there are many, many men out there with a whole lot more gray matter than I'll ever have. The New Testament spends an inordinate amount of time talking about money. Money comes up all the time in the New Testament. Somebody was talking about it the other day that in terms of temporal things, it far exceeds the other topics. Okay, sin is probably the primary, not sin. Love is the primary one, but money certainly comes up a lot, and it's that age-old problem that, you know, where our focus is, that's where our heart is, and the question is, do we want to have our heart be in our pocketbooks, or do we want to have our heart be focused on the Lord? And I know you said that the first choice of Catholics is the church. I prefer to say that the first choice of Catholics should be Christ.
Well, that would make you a Protestant, Joe.
And everything else flows from there. Because if our focus is on the Lord, we can't. It's very, very hard to make mistakes. I would argue that it's almost impossible to make mistakes if our focus is on the Lord. I used to have an old Jesuit professor who used to say to me, and you and I a year ago talked about this. You know, a success in the business world, the CEO who makes the right decision 50% of the time is usually a pretty successful guy.
Sure.
And so this old professor used to say, I'm going to teach you boys how to make the right decision 100% of the time. Well, of course, everybody sat up in our chairs to listen. He said, every time you make a decision based upon love, I promise you that even in the temporal sense, you will not make a wrong decision. Think about that. I thought that just was a powerful statement because the things that we do, whether we're dealing with our spouses, whether we're dealing with our children, whether we're dealing with each other, if I make a decision for you, Mike, based upon my caring about you, my hallucination is that you're going to think, my gosh, that Joel, he really made the decision to help me. That's the right decision.
That's a right decision. Yes.
How do you argue with that?
You don't. You definitely don't.
And I just don't, I think, you know, with, in the very, very culture wars that we're in, it's all about me and what's good for me, not what's good for you, but what's good for me. And this COVID thing that we're dealing with that is literally, regardless of your political affiliations, is gutting our country because we are all so tense and worried and caught up in it. It's all focused on me. And I think life improves dramatically if I'm thinking about you, Mike.
That's an interesting point, not because it's me. I mean, Christians do better, I think, or at least this one does, when they're thinking of others. The problem is, if you tune into my thoughts, I'm usually thinking of me. It's a habit that I have, and it takes work for me to think of others first. Hey.
Absolutely. Great point. And that's where you get a chance to engage in a wrestling match with God. I'm a firm believer that we should be wrestling with the Lord all the time.
Sure.
Because if we're wrestling with the Lord, our focus is on the Lord, and we're saying, Lord, this is what I want to do myself. This is what I think you want me to do. Why should I be doing what you want me to do? What? And boy, when you start to peel back the layers on that, life explodes in front of your face, and you begin to see things that you never saw before. You know, it's like I run into people from time to time who have great difficulty in believing in the supernatural and believing in God. And it's as plain as the nose on our faces. And Thomas Aquinas was great at this, you know, talking about the proofs for the existence of God. But you cannot, I maintain you cannot go outside on a day like today, this beautiful fall day with the leaves changing, and everything is working in harmony. Everything is working in order. And that is the thumbprint of the Creator, order. And when you look to the universe and you see the spaces, you see, I think they're saying now that there are 400 billion galaxies. And the space between those galaxies, if you move it down into the micro world, the world of atoms, in proportion, the space between a neutron and an electron and a proton, they're so small that it's proportional to the space between the galaxies. I mean, it boggles the mind. It boggles the mind to think of that. And so, where does that come from? How does that? You think that just happened?
No.
Yeah, of course not. But there are many out there that say, well, it was random. It was 10,000 monkeys with typewriters that wrote all the works of William Shakespeare. You know.
Well, I think the real question that's being asked, and I've asked the question several times in my life, Joe, is this really the work of God as understood in the Bible? Is all of this, if this is nature, is there a scientific explanation for this? I mean, does it really come from an all-knowing creator in human form? Do you think it does?
Well, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily in human form, but this whole going to be a Joe Coleman talking with Mike Devine on 1400 KBFD.
That's a little scary.
A little scary, I know. But the fact of the matter is why not? Why not? Everybody, you know, it's like Bob Kennedy's famous line, you know, everybody sees the problems of the world and looks at the solutions and say, why? I look at it and I say, why not?
Yeah, I know that. You remember that great movie Inherent the Wind?
Yeah.
Yes. There was a Spencer Tracy, wasn't he great? And Frederick March was great as the William Jennings Bryan character. It wasn't actually it was Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryan. I can't remember who the character's name was in Drummond, Colonel Drummond, that was it. But that whole thing was about a real trial, the Scopes trial. And John Scopes was a biology teacher or a science teacher in Tennessee in 1925. And he was teaching his students Darwin's theory of evolution. Now, the Christian people at the time, they were not Catholics, I might add, took him to court because it was against Tennessee law to teach anything than the biblical story of creation in public schools. That movie, that idea, resonates in the 21st century. There was a judge who dressed down people at a Pennsylvania school board. He severely dressed them down for insisting that the story of creationism be taught side by side with the theory of evolution. The point I'm getting to, Joe, is have you considered Darwin's theory of evolution to be credible?
Well, of course, and interestingly enough, the church has addressed that and has talked about the idea, you know, when God put this whole thing in motion with the word, you know, let there be whatever, let there be life, let there be light, let there be the entire mechanism sprung into life. And the one thing about life is that to be a little Teilhard de Chardin, okay, for you? You'll
Sure.
appreciate this, Mike. All of life from the instant of creation is in a process of moving back to the Creator. So what that simply means is that everything is going to be progressing because it is progression moving back to the Creator. So why not evolution? Why not when the Lord breathes life into the world, that things begin to evolve back to Him? And at some stage along the way, the Lord sees man and says, I'm now breathing into you myself. Okay, now how do we know that? Well, let's just real quickly jump back to Genesis. You know, when the Lord made the earth, and when the Lord made the animals, and when the Lord made the fishes, what did He do? He essentially spoke to the earth, saying, is this good? And to the animals, is this good? To the fishes, is this good? But when it came to man, what did He do? He addressed Himself. Let us make man in our own image and likeness. Something He never did with the earth and the fishes and the animals. And at that moment, you know, we see in a very rudimentary way of the writers, you know, writing monosyllabically, you know, run, are saying we are trying to encapsulate a profound mystery that the Lord made man in His image and likeness, the only thing in the universe that is in the image and likeness of the Lord. And, you know, some believe it, some don't. And the ones that don't, I want to almost say I feel sorry for because they they never get to experience the thrill of inspiration, the thrill of mysticism, the thrill of giving a sliver of the intellect of the Creator.
Joe Coleman is our guest. Joe, we're going to have to take our news break. Please call us back. All right. This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. It's 4:30 exactly, and we're in the Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters studio at 612 South 32nd Street here in Fort Dodge. You may contact Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters by calling 576-6481 or online at www.fdwater.com. The news is next.
Blue Ribbon, Pelham Waters, your water pro since 1949.
Who would have thought there'd be entire aisles devoted to bottled water and that people would buy more water than pop? I'm Brian with Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters here in Fort Dodge. Spring water, drinking water, mineral water. There's so many choices, and we're proud to offer you them all. From our own refreshingly pure drinking water to ultra pure Mountain Valley spring water, Blue Ribbon Pelham's is your complete water store.
Attorney Joe Cordell. New school, new job, new home. Change is hard and can leave you feeling isolated. And divorce delivers one of life's hardest blows. The relationships you counted on are suddenly gone. But you don't have to walk through this alone. For more than 30 years, Cordell & Cordell has guided men through the challenges of divorce. You're not alone. Call Cordell & Cordell.
Schedule an appointment with one of Cordell & Cordell's Des Moines area attorneys. 666 Walnut Street, Suite 1710, Des Moines, Iowa, 50309.
There's never any FOMO with the iHeartRadio app. You won't ever have to miss out on your favorite shows and contests with this radio station again. Radio 24/7, 365. We're here when you want us. Stay connected and listen anywhere when you download the free iHeartRadio app.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
From the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom, this is KVFD News. Fort Dodge City buildings will be closed for staff development this Thursday morning. Facilities impacted include City Hall, Police Administration, Fire Administration, Airport Administration, Fort Dodge Public Library, Blandon Art Museum, and Public Works. Offices regularly open to the public will reopen at noon. The yard waste site will be open regular hours. More information is available at fortdodgeiowa.org. Applications are now open for the 2022 Healthiest State Annual Awards. There are 7 categories for the Healthiest State Initiative Annual Awards, including workplace, healthcare, education, and more. Applications are due at 5 p.m. on October 29th, and finalists will be announced in January of next year. All finalists will be recognized, and winners in each category will be revealed in a virtual ceremony scheduled for February of next year. Each winner will be awarded a monetary prize to contribute towards a health and wellness-related project that benefits their employees, students, or fellow citizens. The Healthiest State Annual Awards are supported by Wellmark Blue Cross and Blue Shield, the Iowa Department of Public Health, Health Partners Unity Point Health, Malvern Bank, and Iowa Medical Society. To learn more about the Healthiest State Annual Awards and to apply, go to iowahealthieststate.com/awards. From Radio Iowa, the state's Crime Victim Assistance Division is receiving nearly $13 million from the U.S. Justice Department, but the director of the division says that's not enough to keep up with the need. Director Sandy Murphy says the money is used to help support victims of crimes.
Like funeral benefits, medical bill coverage, therapy, that sort of thing. And then the largest portion of it sponsors our grant program, which goes out to help provide funding for victim service agencies across the state. And those are domestic abuse centers, sexual assault centers, shelters.
The federal funding comes from the Victims of Crime Act, or VOCA, which puts federal criminal fines, penalties, and bond forfeitures into a fund paid out to the state. Murphy says their amount of funding has dropped as more federal cases aren't followed through or fines paid.
This amount this year is at least an 8% reduction to what we received last year, which was also lower than the year before.
Murphy says they will continue working to find other dollars to help those programs remain viable. For KVFD News, I'm Josh Mason. This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. It's 4:35. We'll be back with Joe Coleman in just a couple of minutes. It's 77 degrees right now. That'll be our day's high. Overnight, some fog, otherwise mostly clear with a low of 49. Tomorrow, a little fog in the morning, otherwise sunny with a high of 75. On Wednesday, some fog, sunny with a high of 74. Thursday, chance of rain.
Sunny with a high of 75. Other than that, Friday, sunny with a high of 80. On Saturday, partly sunny with a high of 80. And Sunday, sunny with a high of 71. Right now in town, 77 degrees. Yeah, we'll get through this. We'll get through this harvest season real quick with this kind of weather. Obituaries this hour brought to you by the historic Bruce Funeral Home at 923 First Avenue South here in Fort Dodge. You may contact the historic Bruce Funeral Home by calling 515-576-5117 or online at www.brucesfuneralhome.com. Linda Davis has died. Linda Davis of Fort Dodge has died at the age of 70. She passed away Friday at Select Specialty Hospitals in Des Moines. Arrangements are pending at the historic Bruce Funeral Home for Linda Davis, who passed away at the age of 70. Obituaries this hour brought to you by the historic Bruce Funeral Home at 923 First Avenue South, Fort Dodge. You may contact the historic Bruce Funeral Home by calling 515-576-5117 or online at www.brucesfuneralhome.com. It's 4:36.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. December corn down 0.75 cents at 5.40 3/4. March unchanged on the day to close at 5.49 3/4. May up a quarter penny at 5.54 3/4. July up a half a cent at 5.55 1/2. November soybeans down 10 3/4 at 12.35 3/4. January down 10 1/4 at 12.46 1/4. March down 9 1/4 at 12.55 1/4. May down 7 1/4 at 12.65 1/4. Soybean meal down 2.90 a ton at 322.10. December wheat closed up 1 1/4 at 7.56 1/2. October live cattle up 222 at 122.62. December up 285 at 128.05. October feeders up 225 at 155. November up 212 at 155.02. In the hog trade, October lean hogs down 150 at 90.80. December down 207 at 83.10. I'm Dwayne Murley.
I'm Charles Payne, and this is the Fox Business Report.
Stocks kicking off the week in the red on inflation worries and political uncertainty in Washington. Big tech companies were the worst performers. So-called FANG stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google parent Alphabet have shed over $240 billion in market value. Shares of Facebook tumbled, taking
Especially when I'm on the air with Joe Coleman here. I mean, lawyer, Catholic. I mean, there's nothing this guy can't do. Joe, how are you? What's that?
A little bit of difficulty with our phone connection. I'm hoping to start coming in where we can sit across from each other.
Well, the
not
phone
have this interference.
Well, the phone system in this studio, I think that's the same one that Ed Breen had when he was here. So, and he did. You said it all those years ago, because we don't have a lot of new equipment here. Well, everything costs so much for guys. A new phone system for the studio, you wouldn't believe what it costs. It's ridiculous.
I know, but
yeah, I'm kind of dependent on the phone in talk radio. That's for sure. Are you?
yeah, very, very true. But you come through so clear, and I know that I get sometimes fade in and out. You just don't have any control over that. It just happens.
Are you talking to me on a cell phone or a landline?
I'm talking to you on a cell phone.
Landline sometimes helps.
So what? I have landline, and I landline from now on. That works, but
yeah, cell phones. It doesn't mean it doesn't. It's not specific to you. Cell phones, especially when somebody's in a car, we have all kinds of problems with connectivity. Then, so
yeah. So, Mike, I think I wanted to devise a plan, subject, and I realize this is your program, and we can do anything you want. But I was thinking that we ought to pick maybe a series of topics and just think about talking about them, every week and work our way through things. We could pick the 7 sacraments and talk about one of the sacraments, for a day, on a Monday.
Sure.
Or we could pick the corporal or spiritual works of mercy and talk about each one for a day. We could talk about encyclicals that popes have written. We could even, if we wanted to get crazy and get people to call in, which I would love to see. Unfortunately, I think we only have one line, so we're kind of tied up.
We're kind of tied up there. Yeah, you'd have to be in the studio with me. Yeah, I had a couple lines when I started, but they dropped it years ago. I don't know why. Money, I suppose.
I tell you.
Joe, you're gone again. You got to come back. Come on back, Joe.
Am I now?
Yeah, you're there.
I spend a lot of, and I hear people come up to me and say, "Hey, I tune into the radio and I listen to the program on Monday, and I have this question." And all I'm thinking to myself is, I'm going to have to get to the studio because there are a number of people that would like to call in. And
I believe that.
Things.
Yeah. I would think that's true. Yeah, I hope that's true. You're breaking up. You're breaking up really bad on me here, Joe. I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah.
You want to try
really
to? Do you have a landline there? You want to try to call me back on a landline if you haven't?
Yeah. I've got my grandkids have unplugged it, but that's one of the problems with having 15 grand.
Oh, there's no problems with having that many grandkids. They're all great. There's no doubt.
All
grandkids are great.
You are so right. We are very blessed. But a landline next week, I promise, and I apologize this week.
Oh, that's okay. No, it happens all the time, really. It's unfortunate, and I wish it didn't, but that's where we are. This isn't WNBC radio in New York, I'll tell you that. we're here. We're here. We're here doing our best, and I think we provide a good service to Fort Dodge and the surrounding area.
I think you provide a great service. And what I was saying is, if we started to talk about some of the stuff that Pope Francis has had to say, that the fireworks might really start to go off, and that if we were in the studio, and this program might get to be real interesting.
Well, that would be fine, and I'm glad you brought up Pope Francis, because when he was nominated and elected as Pope, Glenn Beck, a former Catholic, now a Mormon, and a lunatic talk show host. As a matter of fact, I'd love to meet Glenn Beck so I could beat the hell out of him. But he immediately branded Pope Francis as a Marxist. Most of Pope Francis' theology, he said, came directly from Marxism. I'd really kind of like to beat the hell out of him for that. I just, it's just a dimwit.
Right.
I can't hear you, Joe.
I say you could go.
No, I'm losing you, buddy.
Well, I don't know. You would beautiful day like today, everything would be coming through perfectly.
Yes, yeah, it was in the first segment, actually. The first segment. Did you change positions there somehow?
No, I haven't moved an inch hardly. So.
Well, anyway, try to respond there to Mr. Beck and his allegations of Marxism.
Well, the short answer to that is if you everything that Jesus Christ has had to say, an argument could be made that Karl Marx took.
Well, that's an argument. That is an argument. Legitimate.
All
too.
right. Hey, if somebody wants, if somebody wants to do a service for one day, give them two. Give everything that you have to the poor and come follow me. I wonder what Glenn Beck is going to say to the Lord.
I have no idea. It's a few Catholics, a couple of prominent Catholics like Pat Buchanan's sister. Pat Buchanan, of course, the great news commentator. His sister, I can't remember her name, but she does a pretty good job of commentary herself. She grew up in a strong Irish Catholic family, and she converted to Mormonism. Glenn Beck apparently grew up in a strong Catholic family. That's quite a leap for me to go from Catholicism to Mormonism, but I don't know. They made it somehow.
I was listening to who will remain nameless, a well-renowned Protestant minister the other day talking about Scripture, and digressed, and he went off to Mormonism, and I thought they were going to pull the plug on him. It was
that bad, huh?
Our theory is we try to love everyone, and I figure the Lord will sort it out. My job is to love them. It's the Lord's job to sort them out.
There you go.
Well,
that's true.
It's hard, but yeah, I think we could have great fun talking about Francis and some of the things that he's proposed. Now, I don't know if you've been watching lately what he's saying about the environment. You're going to see a whole new approach to the environment by the Catholic Church. I mean, it's already there, but he's going to develop it and put some flesh on the skeleton. And wow, I think a lot of people are going to absolutely love it, and a lot of people are going to absolutely hate it.
Well, that's kind of the environment is kind of an odd thing for the church to be involved in, especially when you have the pontiff himself advocating for climate change legislation.
Yeah.
I don't get that. I really don't get that. I mean, is he going to give us a position on what? Ethanol, gun control, what? What is he going to give us? I mean, there's all kinds of political positions. There are important political positions. Why doesn't he come and sit in the Senate chamber while they debate the budget? I mean,
Hey, there you go again, as Ronald Reagan said.
There I go again. Yes, there I go again, and I don't mind going there.
It's about stewardship. It's about stewardship of the earth and protecting the earth and doing good things for the earth. And stewardship has to do with the idea of husbandry as well. And there's, as an interest etymology, husbandry comes, as you and I would understand, with the idea of being a husband, being a protector, watching out for things, taking care of the family, making provision for the family. Stuff is simple. This is not science, Mike. This is simple stuff. But we make it so daggone complicated.
I don't think so. I think there is a definite split in our roles as husbands and fathers and brothers from a highly political issue like climate change. I don't know if we want to extend our concept of manly responsibilities to get involved in something like climate change.
Well, I think if we don't, we aren't going to have a climate very long. That's just my position. I think this world is changing, and we see it. And I hope to come and one quick example. When I was a little boy growing up on the farm, I'd be riding around with my dad, and we'd see these birds, and they make the funniest call. And they said the call was killdeer, 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 and that's obviously the name of the bird, killdeer. And I said, where do those birds come from? And these birds from Kansas and from the plains of Colorado. They're a very dry environment bird. They don't come here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if you've been out in the country lately, but there are killdeer everywhere over the last 50 years.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Mother Nature is telling us something. Birds are moving north, moving from the dry plains into the air. Something's going on, Mike. That's just a casual female observation about Mother Nature telling us.
Well, that is a position you have as a man, as a human being, as an individual, and you certainly have that right. And you have every right as a Catholic or whoever you are to advocate for climate legislation. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that climate change doesn't exist necessarily, although I think there's a few Chicken Littles out there around climate change. However, I wonder if it's a good thing for the church to take a position on.
Absolutely. We have to be not of the world, but we have to be the world. And we, not only Catholics, but Christians, need to be intimately involved in politics. And we have an argument to make. And the marketplace is where the argumentation goes on. All we have to do is keep the decibel level down so we can hear each other. But you know something? If all the deniers of climate change have a better approach, where is?
I've
never heard it. Have you ever heard it, Mike? And if so, tell me what it is.
We're talking about two different things here again. You will recall that we had a couple of United States senators that were priests. A senator from Connecticut and a senator from, I can't remember where the other senator served. This is way back in the late 70s or early 80s. And the Pope at the time, which would have been Pope John Paul II, I believe, the Pope instructed those priests to give up their office because he didn't believe the church should be involved in politics to that extent, where a priest was actually holding high public office. You remember what I'm talking about?
I do not. It vaguely rings a bell, but I'm not conversant enough to engage in an intelligent conversation of it.
Okay. Well, I'm bringing this up.
I'll be ready for you next week if you give me a week.
All right. That's fine, but I am bringing this up. Because John Paul II, unlike Francis, didn't believe that the church, again, should be involved in apparently very ferocious political debates. It carried...
Put this off the table. Popes can make mistakes.
What? John Paul made a mistake?
Well, John Paul was human.
But he's infallible.
He wasn't infallible. No.
Come on, he's fallible in the matters of faith.
He's infallible on the matters of doctrinal faith.
Right.
He's fallible just like you and I are on the other 99.999% of his opinions.
Boy, that's a pretty weak pope we got there, isn't it?
The point I'm trying to do well, and I know you with, is that folks can make mistakes just like you and I, and because they make mistakes like you and I, that doesn't mean that the concept of Christ is in error, because folks made mistakes.
It does cast a big shadow on infallibility of any kind.
That's because most people don't understand infallibility. It's just like you and I.
Infallibility is a pretty precise word there, Joe.
Well, it is, but most people don't understand infallibility became a doctrine of faith and moral. Most people don't understand that it has to be speaking ex cathedra or from the throne, and he has to be talking about concepts of faith and morals. They think, the Pope's talking about the weather for golf next week. Doesn't happen now.
All right, Joe. Well, I'm all for the plan of action that you laid out a little bit earlier. I think it's better than just you and I talking about our personal opinion about things. And I'll get back to you on the name of the priest who had to resign because of John Paul's orders. But we're going to have to go right now. I thank you so much for your time, Joe.
I love visiting with you. God bless you and all your listeners.
Thank you, Joe. This
Bye-bye.
is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. We're in the Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters studio. Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters is at 612 South 32nd Street here in Fort Dodge. You may contact Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters by calling 576-6481 or online at www.fdwater.com. It's 4:57.
Listen to this station anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music.